Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marwan Cameron. This is The Conduit, and we have a special broadcast for you today. As you can see from the title, today is Nelson Mandela's birthday, and I have a very special guest with us today from the NAACP that is going to talk about Nelson Mandela and talk about his legacy. I would say probably, as far as I know, this is the foremost expert in Kitsap County in regards to Nelson Mandela. He may dispute that, but from all my conversations with him, I give him that moniker. So, with no further ado, let me bring forward uh, Mr. Carl. Carl, how are you doing today?
Well, I think I'm doing okay. I've made it this far through the day, and I'm here, which is where I intended to be. So far the day is going okay.
All right. Well, it is an honor that you were able to join us today. Let me just make sure that we're coming through five by five, and we'll jump right into it. As we're doing that, would you mind
I
telling
think I'm doing
people
okay.
just a little bit
I've
about
made it
yourself?
this far through the day. Well, I'm a retired structural engineer from the Navy subbase in Bangor, and I've been a long time community activist. I became a anti-apartheid activist back in 1984 uh, in Los Angeles. Before I was an anti-apartheid activist, I had a one-year course in international law and a one-year course in international relations at the Navy Reserve Officer School of Los Angeles. So I had that background coming into the anti-apartheid movement, and I remembered that there wasn't very much known uh, about the anti-apartheid movement here in the United States, and it was probably because we just flat out were not paying attention,
Mm.
because uh, we had been taught in some ways that the uh, African National Congress and the Southwest Africa People's Organization in neighboring Namibia were communist organizations, and therefore that the United States had to uh, support the existence of the apartheid regime in South Africa in order that we would not see all of Southern Africa falling under the influence of the Soviet Union. That was not true, and we failed to see that it was not true because we flat out were not paying attention. And it was when we started paying attention as a nation that the policy changed, that it was seen that the African National Congress in South Africa and the Southwest Africa People's Organization in Namibia were actually trying to set up American type governments in their respective countries, and that they would be, if they succeeded, that they would probably be pretty good allies of the United States. And uh, as I'm seeing it, they're ready to be pretty good allies of us even now, if we're ready to be good allies of ourselves. So that's the way I'm seeing it. If you look at Mandela and his legacy, uh, it's known in history that he was the first black president of South Africa, that he was a revolutionary leader. Uh, what is sometimes overlooked is the fact that the revolution in South Africa was accomplished with a very low level of force being used. And in fact, uh, when the new government took place and they kind of reviewed what were the most helpful and least helpful parts of the revolution, the uh, part of that they use in force, the armed struggle, was considered the least helpful part of it because what it had consisted of was occasional hit and run sabotage attacks. And the effect of those was actually to make it harder for Mandela, the diplomat, to do his diplomatic work. Uh, Now, Mandela, the diplomat, he was locked up in prison in South Africa for nearly 27 years. And while he was in prison, he had some time on his hands, and he used that time to strike up conversations with the prison guards. And he was alert to one seemed like an individual prison guard was ready to listen to what the program of the African National Congress was. And when he explained that to the prison guard would respond saying, that seems to make sense. That makes better sense for this country than this system that we're enforcing here. So the prison guards started getting converted over to the program of the African National Congress. And they started cooperating with Mandela, who was turning the prison into a university of the revolution. And his students were not only his fellow inmates, especially the revolutionary inmates, but after a while, the prison guards became his students in this University of the Revolution. And every time that the apartheid regime would see that a prison guard was being converted over to the cause of the African National Congress, they would replace him with somebody else that would come in and crack down and exercise more authority over these revolutionaries. And each time that a new prison guard came in, what the Mandela group, he and his revolutionary co-revolutionaries, they would convert the new prison guard over to the ways of the African National Congress. So they were able to convert one prison guard after another, or one set of prison guards after another, to be supporters of the anti-apartheid revolution. And by the time that Mandela was released from prison in 1990, which was just 2 days after the adoption of the Namibian Constitution, which is the Namibian Constitution very much resembles the U.S. Constitution. Not completely a replica of it, but it has a lot of similarities to it. And by that time, Mandela had achieved, by his diplomatic approach to the prison guards, they turned it not only into a university of the revolution, they almost succeeded in converting it into a seat of government that was governing the country from inside the prison, and as a equal partner in governing the country. Now that was 4 years before they had the final all-race elections in South Africa, which put the new government in place. But the new government was on its way to becoming in place by the time that Mandela was released from prison in South Africa. And it was Mandela, the diplomat, who accomplished this. And he did that by diligent, patient, and diligent, patient, and persistent diplomacy, keeping alive not only the intelligence of the threats around him, but the intelligence of the opportunities to build new coalitions. And that was what the African National Congress was able to accomplish. And they had the support of the Soviet Union for a while when they were organizing on a global basis. And the Soviets were doing that not because they really believed in democracy, because they demonstrated in other parts of the world that they did not believe in democracy at all, but they believed in opposing the United States, because the United States was supporting the apartheid regime, even though they were uh, criticizing the apartheid system, criticizing the way the regime was enforcing it, but they were a little bit scared to actually support the African National Congress until the ANC, in their global outreach and organization efforts, until they reached the United States back in the 1980s.
Okay.
They started organizing mostly among the civil rights activists in the black communities, and that's when they got the message out to the American government first, to the Congress, and then to a reluctant president who finally got the message, and he started giving active cooperation to the ANC. And when he got involved, that was Reagan. When he did get involved on the side of the African National Congress, it was with the understanding that it was time not only to oppose apartheid, but to oppose apartheid and win. So that was the big decision there, not just to oppose apartheid, but to oppose apartheid and win.
So Reagan wanted to ensure victory. That was his motivation.
Yes,
Okay.
he was looking to do a change of government, establishment of a legitimate government in South Africa.
Mm.
That was during his second term.
Okay.
During his first term, he was treating the apartheid regime like an ally.
Mm. Okay.
And when the change took place, it actually caused some concern among some of the ANC activists here in this country. They started wondering if the Americans might not be feeling well, because the change was a very pronounced change from previous practice. The initial business-like meetings with the African National Congress were with the then exiled President Oliver Tambo in Zambia, the ANC headquarters in exile in Zambia. And they met with Oliver Tambo at that time and the other ANC members in exile. And then they invited Oliver Tambo to come and meet with the Secretary of State, George Shultz, in January of 1987.
Mm.
And that was when the apartheid regime was cracking down very hard, even more draconian measures than they had used in the first 38 years of their existence. Because the apartheid regime was elected into office in 1949, and they took a racist system. The system had been racist even up until then, but they took it to new levels of insanity. So that had been 2 generations of apartheid rule, pretty near 2 generations of apartheid rule. And at the time that Oliver Tambo, president of the ANC, met with the Secretary of State, George Shultz, that for the folks in South Africa, it was probably looking like there was not very much hope. But in reality, the developments were taking place, which was going to lead to democratic rule in South Africa and in neighboring Namibia, even while it was not looking very hopeful at all. So that was part of that history there. And part to remember, as I'm seeing it, is that that was Mandela, the diplomat, who achieved the liberation of South Africa. Now, it didn't hurt to have the United States on their side, and the United States was at that time the most powerful country in the world.
Okay.
So And it was that military power that the apartheid regime respected. Because before uh, there was the meetings uh, between um, uh, Oliver Tambo and George Shultz, or any civilized meetings between uh, American officials and African National Congress officials, there was groups against apartheid here in the United States. There was artists against apartheid. There was athletes against apartheid. There was clergy against apartheid. And people who were alive at that time can remember back to those days. And the apartheid regime paid no attention to the artists against apartheid, or the athletes against apartheid, or the clergy against apartheid. Uh, when they were up against the most powerful military force in the world against apartheid, that's when they started to
That's
pay
when they
attention.
started to move.
Yeah, that's what they respected.
Military might.
Yeah, they respected military might. And there's another phase to this, that we would do our own country a favor if we would start being a lot less militaristic and more diplomatic, because we have to develop an appreciation for the importance of international diplomacy. And one thing that this leads up to, and it's especially appropriate for Mandela International Day, for uh, about the last 5 months, this is going back to late February,
Okay.
that the current president of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, has had an offer out on the table, an offer to mediate between all the warring parties in the Middle East and to develop a resolution to the war, which would provide for the equal protection of the basic human rights of all people of all different nationalities. That would mean Iranians, Lebanese, uh, Jews, Palestinians, uh, Jordanians, and I don't know if I already mentioned Jordanians, but also Egyptians uh, and Libyans, the whole group of all different nationalities in the Middle East that are embroiled in this war. And that offer has been on the table since before the war started, and it's been largely ignored by powerful people who are going after a military solution.
Does it look like there's any movement today, or is it still being ignored?
As far as I'm seeing, it's still being ignored.
Okay.
Now, I think that the different factions there, the warring parties, are in fear of each other
Mm.
and acting desperate, and yet acting more and more desperate all the time. We might not sense it quite so much here in this country because we're not in the line of fire.
Correct.
Uh, though there are a great many people who have suffered at the hands of this government that are sitting in detention facilities that don't belong in detention facilities. They were just of the wrong complexion, and they got caught up in some ethnic cleansing sweeps. And I would suggest, and I might be wrong about this, that the reason that we have not had ethnic cleansing sweeps of that type here in Kitsap County is probably because we have a pretty strong branch of the NAACP, and that the dictator in the White House probably is a little bit leery about taking on the NAACP. That's my guess. Now, I might be wrong about that because there's a lot of things that I've been wrong about all my life. but I might be wrong about that. But that's my impression. That the reason that we've had it relatively peaceful compared to other places is because of the fact that we have a pretty strong branch of the NAACP here in Bremerton. And uh, Cyril Ramaphosa, during the revolutionary days, he was the president of the Congress of South African Trade Unions. So he was familiar with the practice of going to bat for working people.
Okay.
And after the new government came into place, he became a successful businessman before he returned into politics and became the head of the African National Congress and voted by the parliament into the presidency. They have the South African system is more of a parliamentary system uh, than the American system or the Namibian system. The Namibian system is almost a copy of the American system, uh, with the uh, with the difference that in both South Africa and Namibia that they abolished the death penalty, and in Namibia they have a national ombudsman, an actual office of ombudsman who is kind of a national government complaint department that people can go and bring their complaints specifically to the office of the ombudsman. So uh, that's the opportunity that's there, and I think that it's good. This is a good day to highlight that opportunity that we have. That's the off ramp. This very destructive uh, war that's going on in the Middle East. And as I was saying, I think both sides are scared.
Well, you were giving us some of the legacy of Nelson Mandela, and I think where you left off was, if you could reflect on some of the 27 years that he spent in prison and what he was able to do behind bars.
Well, he was um, organizing behind bars.
How was he able to do that?
Well, he had his to start. He had his communication uh, with the prison guards.
Hmm.
So uh, being able to talk with the prison guards got him more freedom of movement uh, in within the prison, and got better treatment, and he got uh, better able to communicate with the African National Congress around the country. Uh, and they had their means of communication all along, and they're very diligent group. We've got the old uh, uh, saying that teamwork makes the dream work, right? Well, that was one thing that you learn from the history of the African National Congress, the Revolutionary African National Congress. Very strong teamwork, and everybody pitched in. They used their abilities, their own particular abilities, as best that they could to get the message out, uh, get organized on a global basis. Uh, they probably knew that the Soviet Union was not really interested in democratic reforms, but they used their connection with the Soviets, who were giving them material support uh, and financial support. So they used that to go and organize around the world. But they also made it clear that they were trying to organize for democracy
Hmm.
in South Africa. And the Namibians next door were going along with them. The African National Congress had their Freedom Charter, was their guiding document behind the revolution. And that was a guiding document also behind the revolution in Namibia. In fact, there were actually two different phases of the same revolution: the revolution in South Africa and the revolution in Namibia. And it was uh, based on the same democratic principles that were uh, written by law to go into effect here in this country. And uh, we weren't really living up to our own laws as a nation at that time. So, in a way, the revolution in South Africa and Namibia helped us also.
Oh, wow. Okay. Speak to that a little bit.
Well, when uh, when they when the Namibians uh, uh, accomplished their revolution, uh, and the Reagan administration undertook as part of their outreach to the African National Congress, they also changed what had been U.S. policy of, of uh, opposing independence for Namibia until the Cuban troops were removed from neighboring Angola. And in around 1986, it was around 1985 or 1986,
Hmm.
the um, Angolan government, defending against the apartheid invaders, had made the comment that they thought that they could handle their own defense without Cuban troops if the there was independence in Namibia, if the apartheid regime troops were not able to operate out of Namibia. So the Reagan administration, on hearing that they decided, since we're starting to do some outreach to the African National Congress anyway, they decided, well, if they think that they can do it without Cuban troops in Angola, um, let's go ahead and make it happen. Let's go ahead and undertake jointly with the United Nations uh, uh, a procedure by the way there's going to be some free elections and independence for Namibia. And they went ahead and they did that. And they had in late 1980, 89, it was late 1989, that they had free elections in Namibia. They undertook in 1988 to do that. And they had the free elections in uh, 1989. It was November 7th through the 11th of 1989. It was a 4-day election. It gave people plenty of time to get out and vote. And the Namibians, the Southwest Africa People's Organization, won a majority, uh, but they did not win the 2/3 majority that they needed to write the Constitution themselves.
Gotcha.
They had 57% of the vote, and the Democratic Chernhala Alliance, which had opposed the Southwest Africa People's Organization. In fact, they'd been enemies on the battlefield. Uh, they came in second. They had something like 38 or 39% of the vote. So uh, they had the constitutional duty to sit down together across the conference table and um, and write a constitution for the newly independent country. They were the Constituent Assembly. And once they got to the other sides of the table, these old battlefield enemies or former battlefield enemies, that they were able to see each other as human beings, and they decided, well, uh, we're old enemies, but we have the future of our children at stake here, so let's
Mm.
sit down and write a constitution, which will be good for everybody. And it took them about 2 months to do that. That was from the mid-November of 1989 until February 9th of 1990.
Which coincides with the release of Mandela on February 11th
That's right.
of 1990.
That's right. That was just a couple of days after the adoption of the Namibian Constitution. And in my recollection of history, I don't know exactly how those events might have been related, except the fact that the Southwest Africa People's Organization had as their guiding document of their revolution the same freedom charter that the African National Congress had as their guiding document behind the revolution. And the Freedom Charter called for a non racial, non sectarian democracy
Hmm.
in which the rights of all the people would be equally protected. They didn't have any vindictiveness written into their constitution. They had certain socialistic ideas written into it, which is understandable because capitalism had not been very kind to them. Capitalism had put power, had put power in the hands uh, of a very tyrannical minority government that was basically enslaving the majority of the people. So uh, the Freedom Charter uh, it put out that philosophy and that plan, and they said that they were going to take care of people, that farmers would have enough seeds to grow their crops, uh, and they also advocated for active diplomacy in the rest of the world, promoting peaceful solutions instead of warlike solutions. So that was something that, for a while, uh, that our country learned from that example, and we got more than we can learn from that example also, because the African National Congress, they when they became the government of South Africa, the South Africans and the Namibians, uh, together with the Botswanians and the Zambians, uh, they uh, put together a network of democratic governments uh, across Southern Africa, and that's the Southern Africa Development Community. And the Southern Africa Development Community was a anti-apartheid activist grouping during the revolutionary years, and they became a uh, general, all-around development community of existing governments uh, once the new South African government was in place. So, so that was a way uh, that they put together uh, a community of democratic governments, and the overall population of the nations of the South Africa Development Community is about the same as the population of the United States.
Okay.
So they put together a grouping of democratic nations, which extended from sea to shining sea across Africa, assuming that the sea shines in the southern hemisphere also, the way it does in the northern hemisphere. And they had just the one, uh, I guess you might call it one sore spot that was just existing there, which I understand is still a sore spot, and that's the government in Zimbabwe, that the president who emerged in power in Zimbabwe, and they finished the revolution there, uh, got a little bit carried away with his power, and he became a dictator.
Gotcha.
So that's a sore spot in the Southern Africa Development Community.
So let me hold you off right there. Let you get a drink of water, and I'm gonna
Okay.
get you some more if you need it. If you're tuning in right now, today is Nelson Mandela's birthday, and we have the NAACP's own Carl Jakobsson here to discuss the legacy of um, the great Nelson Mandela. And he's given us a history of not only South Africa, but neighboring countries of Namibia, and talking about how they have formed their constitution and how these things have coincided. And right now we're talking about 89 and how that's coinciding and just butting up with the release of Nelson Mandela in 1990. And what I want to ask you as I grab you some more water here, I'm gonna turn my camera off here while I get up. But as you were an engineer, how did you get into, you were an activist as well, but kind of a historian, right? You have all of this history and you have some notes there, but most of this is just coming off the top of your head, right? This is just this history that is just in your mind that is just flowing out of you. Where did this interest come from? And that this hunger to preserve this and to share this out. Where does that come from? Why is this important to you, Carl?
Well, I uh, grew up. Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. Grew up being taught that the United States was a beacon of democracy and that we were supposed to be making progress to improve our democracy. In fact, the Constitution started out in the preamble. It said, thank you, Marwan. Said that the purpose of the Constitution was to work towards a more perfect union, and it contained a Bill of Rights in it. And there were some inconsistencies in the Constitution, unfortunately, that when they reported out a Constitution having been motivated by a Declaration of Independence that restricted the right to vote to white male property owners, that was just as much of a minority government as was the minority regime in South Africa during the apartheid years. Because white males, right away, that's less than half the population. But then when it said white male property owners, that cut it way down to a very small percentage that were actually in charge of the country. And that was that inconsistency was what finally resulted in a civil war in the 1860s. But in growing up, I was taught in school and also indoctrinated. Well, maybe not indoctrinated, but I had the sense when I was serving in the Navy that I was defending a democracy. We're defending democracy, and that we're always trying to improve on it. That was what it said in the Constitution, that we're going to have a more perfect union, and that we were working towards that more perfect union all the time. And some of us were working towards a more perfect union, and there were some addicted to the old ways, and but it was more that by diligently participating and keeping the country strong and trying to keep the country well directed, that was what was going to make things better, and that we could make things better, just by sticking together and working for improvement in the constitutional way.
So it sounds like this is your civic duties. It almost sounds like you're saying this is still almost part of your service.
Yeah, well, I had before I became an anti-apartheid activist, I had back in the 1970s, I had the 1 year course in international law and a 1 year course in international relations. So our instructor in the course in international relations, and this is somewhat instructive in looking back at the history of our own country back in the 1960s and 70s and 80s, that he had made the comment because his ancestral background, he was a reserve commander whose ancestral background was half Mexican and half black. And when he mentioned about South Africa, he had said that he was conflicted in looking at what was happening in South Africa because he had the loyalty to the country, the United States, and it conflicted with his concern about seeing black people mistreated in South Africa. Now, if he had known about the Freedom Charter, or if any of us had known about the Freedom Charter, had that much familiarity with that history in South Africa, we would not have seen any inconsistency there. We would have, in fact, we would have looked at it and said, well, gee, these people are trying to set up a government just like the same government that we're trying to have, what the government that we have on the books now.
Mm-hmm.
Even though we're not always following it the way we should, but that's the government that we got on the books. They're trying to establish that kind of government in their own country. So it would have made it much easier, but would have made it much quicker if the U.S. had been paying attention at that time to what was going on in Africa, to make that change in policy. In fact, it shouldn't have actually required a change in policy at all, because if we'd been paying attention at the time that the Freedom Charter was adopted, that we would have read it and said, gee, these guys are trying to establish a government, the same kind of government that we have over here. Democratic government where everybody's equally protected. So there are some things that had not yet happened at that time in this country. We did not yet have the Civil Rights Act of 1964 or the Voting Rights Act of 1965 that had passed with a great deal of difficulty. But but if we had been paying attention, we would have been treating the African National Congress like allies right from the time that they adopted the Freedom Charter. And we can save our own country a lot of trouble now if we suppose that this afternoon, and there's nothing to stop us from happening, suppose this afternoon that we've made a national decision, but you know that South African offer to mediate between all sides in this war, that looks pretty good, especially since we're taking casualties and that we're inflicting casualties on each other, and that everybody has some reasons to be scared of what's going on there. And our military neighbors are being taken to fight in this war also. Very unfortunate, because they're being sent to fight in wars all over the world, including in the Middle East. And their ranks have been made weaker by the purges that have been done by the guy that calls himself Secretary of War. That's very unfortunate. It's something that we have, a lot of the news media have missed, that the changes that have been put in place have been such as to make our own military establishment weaker and demoralized. So those are our neighbors also. But it would be something, it would be good to take advantage of the opportunity. And if we could prevail upon our elected representatives, hey, we ought to take advantage of this opportunity. It'd be good for our own country, good for the whole world. Take advantage of this opportunity to invite the South Africans to go ahead and mediate, and we'll cooperate and mediate along with them.
So that's a good question, Carl, that I would have for you. You have Nelson Mandela, who's in prison for 27 years, and there's this, network that is taking place. And I don't want it to be lost on anyone. 27 years is almost 3 decades, right, of being in prison and doing this work alongside the ANC. that you said is global, right? And so you have all of these people pushing and rowing kind of in the same direction to make this change. And so what can be done now is we see all of this unrest globally, and we don't talk about a lot of the things that are happening geopolitically, especially on the continent of Africa. Like there's a lot of war that's happening there that isn't being addressed or covered in the national or the local media at all. Um, so what can we do? Because that really is a blueprint for change, and a testament of what uh, one man can really spearhead alongside, maneuvering and motivating a sea change I mean, that's a hell of a grassroots effort to motivate a movement that has really done some things. And we'll talk about, the rest of his accolades here in a minute.
Well, I would say that one thing that we can do, that we can contact our elected officials, especially congressional elected officials, and say, that you all might not have the power to make serious changes in the federal government because of the Republican trifecta, but you can put pressure on the government to take up this offer of mediation uh, between uh, that the South Africans are offering. Another thing, when you read news from Africa, the European Union and the African Union are developing a good cooperative relationship. It's not covered by the news media, the TV news media here, but you can find it on the internet. And it was just on the news this morning that the German government uh, is establishing a close relationship with the African Union, and they're actually having one of their representatives go into the African Union and work on geopolitical situations, just like the situation that they're working with in the Middle East. So that there are European Union nations that are starting to take up on this offer uh, from the South Africans to mediate this war that's going on in the Middle East, and try to use that global influence to use that global influence to make the world more peaceful.
Carl, is there any more we can do? It feels like with the ANC, they were doing so much more than just writing their congressperson, which we hear that all the time, and so many don't do so. Some do, but is there any more? Because it seems like they were doing more than that. What were the folks that were in prison that had direct access to Mandela? What were they doing? What were the ones that were adjacent to those folks doing? What are some things that folks can do? You're in here, you're gathering the information. You're making sure that you are curating the history and then sharing the history out. What are some other tangible things that people can do?
Well, you can organize public events. Um, you can uh, organize within the churches uh, because it's certainly the pursuit of peace is something which is definitely uh, considered part of the work of the Lord uh, uh, when you're going to church. Uh, so that's part of the work of the Lord. So that organizing the churches to promote peace, have public events. And speaking of public events, I told Robert Harris, he's back in the national convention right now.
All right.
But I told him that I would put in a plug for the annual Freedom Fund.
Tell everyone who Robert Harris is.
Yeah, he's the president of our Bremerton branch of the NAACP. and he's back at the National Convention now. But I will put in a plug for the NAACP Freedom Fund banquet,
Okay.
uh, Saturday, September the 19th at the Admiral Theater uh, at, at 5 p.m. The Admiral Theater is along Pacific Avenue uh, in downtown Bremerton. I think it's 515 Pacific Avenue, but walk down Pacific Avenue, you can see where the Admiral Theater is. So that's where it's going to be. It's going to be Saturday, September the 19th, and you can get the tickets at the Admiral Theater, or you can order the tickets online, and the ticket price is $100 each. And that's the NAACP Freedom Fund banquet, uh, September the 19th.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and pull that up on the screen there. If you want to go to the website, it is naacpbremerton.org. Together we stand. Membership is in power. If you are here locally, you probably recognize many of these faces because you see them everywhere. And just scrolling down here, Carl, you can see that on the screen there, right?
Yes.
Become a member. Their mission is to achieve equity, political rights, and social inclusion by advancing policies and practices that expand human and civil rights, eliminate discrimination, and accelerate the well-being, education, and economic security of Black people and all persons of color. Civic engagement. Join us at an upcoming event. Support Kitsap Black businesses. Get involved, become a member, become engaged, make a donation. And I don't see the event up there yet, but tell us again when that is.
Okay. Yeah, it might be a different part of the website, but
Oh, here it is. Freedom from Banquet. Let's see about the
okay.
banquet. Boom, September 19, 2026. There we go. Jeffrey Robinson is the keynote speaker, executive director, the Who We Are Project, ACLU Deputy Legal Director and Director of the ACLU Trone Center for Justice and Equality. This is at the Admiral Theater, Saturday, September 19, 2026, 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. This is an excellent event. I know because I have attended several times.
Oh, that starts at 5.
Starts at 5? Oh, 5 p.m. I'm sorry. I can lie and say I wasn't wearing my glasses, but you guys can see I have my glasses on. If you're interested in sponsorships, you can do that. There's a sponsorship form here. There's also a silent auction. If you're looking for a flyer, you can get that there. You can look at past programs. There's the 2023, 2024 program. I believe at this banquet, I think I received an award last year. I think mine is right there, huh? Yeah. That is my community service award. I think you guys can see that. Yeah. That was last year. Right here in my office. So that was my honor. Let's see. All right. So again, that is an excellent event. And again, get involved. And this is the change. And so that wasn't a tee up, but that was a perfect segue into the NAACP. And that really is the change. And so that is how that is going to get change is going to happen. And I think a lot of people feel helpless and hopeless, and they want change. They don't know how to make change. Um, they don't know what to do, and they need guidance and they need direction. And then we hear the stories on, about Nelson Mandela. They, for many people, they've never heard of the ANC, right? And so, folks like you come and say, okay, well, this is what the African National Congress did. And then you hear the stories and, okay, well, this one did this and this one did that. And it took 27 years. And this was the achievement on the end of it. And the fight continues and you have to steadily fight. And, folks will dip in and dip out. And folks that were there at the beginning don't make it to the end, but other folks come along and the fight continues. And, you have folks that have been there for as long as you have been an activist, right? I mean, you're talking about what, 4 or 5 decades now, right?
Yes, I started being I think that I started being an activist uh, back in 1966. I was working in Washington, D.C.
I wasn't even born yet,
Well,
and I'm old.
I started uh, doing a one-man letter writing campaign in support of the move for home rule in Washington,
That's
D.C.
powerful. Say that again. One man.
Yeah, one-man letter writing campaign.
That's powerful. One
Yeah,
person. One person. Right.
yeah. Now I wasn't doing it all by myself. There was a movement going on for home rule in Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
But I was doing this independently, writing letters to elected officials, to the effect that this will make American democracy stronger if there's home rule in Washington D.C. and that the uh, reasons why it's being held up, uh, real reason is just flat out racism. It's not doesn't have anything to do with any of the sophisticated ideas that people are putting forth uh, for why that Washington D.C. should be run by the federal government, because there are democratic governments all over the world that their national capital is not run by the national government. It's run by, it's the elected government run by the people, and also all the state governments.
Mm-hmm.
The capital of every state is democratically elected by the people of the capital city.
Yeah, but the point is that there is something that you can do. That's the big takeaway that I want folks to really glean from this. Why don't we jump back in and talk about the fact that Mandela was released from prison on February 11th of 1990, and then by May of 1994, he's president of South Africa. Can we pick up from there?
Yes. Well, it helped that they had the elected government in place in Namibia, because it turned out that the democracy in Namibia became a kind of dress rehearsal for the coming democracy in South Africa.
All right.
Now, South Africa is many times larger than Namibia. So uh, they, at first, the ANC had wanted elections, wall race elections um, before 1994. They said that 1994 is not soon enough. And then they saw that they had the daunting task of registering millions and millions of new voters. So that was a Herculean administrative task to register all those millions and millions of new voters in 4 years. And these were folks, they had largely been raised with Bantu education,
Mm.
barely able to read. So, but they knew that the African National Congress was trying to help them out, and they knew that because it was largely a Christian revolution as well, and they'd been taught in church that we're not supposed to be vindictive, that vengeance is only coming from God, that the Lord wants us to be peaceful people. In fact, that was one of the things that Jesus said in his Sermon on the Mount: "Blessed are the peacemakers; they will be called the children of God." Then a few verses right after that, when he said, "Blessed are the peacemakers," he predicted a kind of a bumpy road for the peacemakers here in this life. That there would be some reward in this life, and some might have to wait for their reward in the next life. But he said that the peacemakers would be blessed in the eyes of God, even though to run into a kind of bumpy road here in this life.
And so at first he was made president of the ANC from 91 to 97, and then he became president of South Africa in 94.
94, that's
Mhm.
right. Yeah.
I just wanted to make that clarifying statement. And so, what changed in South Africa during that time, and what was so momentous for those that weren't born during that time, right? Because there's a lot of folks that are listening that um, that wasn't there. That's history. That's in their textbooks, right?
Yeah. Well, uh, one thing that has happened in South Africa that for those who had some education and good business sense, it opened up opportunities that had previously been closed off to black people. But the real change has not happened as much as it should have by this time. And we could debate about that. One thing that was needed is police reform. And that's something that we have in common with the folks in South Africa. They have a problem with crime over there, and we have a problem with crime here in this country. In fact, uh, when the Trump regime was resisting having refugees coming to this country, they started accepting Afrikaners from South Africa to come to this country. It was a whites only refugee acceptance program started in 2025, and it was based on the lie that the South African government was persecuting the white population. It's never true, and it was proven not to be true. But one thing that happened, the Afrikaners came to the United States trying to get away from the crime problem in their home country of South Africa. There's a few of them who came over here. They came and saw that the crime problem was worse here, and they went back to South Africa. They said, if we're going to be living in a crime-ridden country, we might as well be in our own crime-ridden country instead of a foreign country. But that brings up also the work of the NAACP and also Pastor Johnson over at Mount Zion in the PACT program.
Shout out to Pastor Johnson.
Yeah, that's right. And promoting community-based policing.
Mm-hmm.
And Pastor Johnson is a lifelong member of the NAACP also. So the NAACP is working on this, and the Mount Zion Baptist Church, they were working with Bishop Robertson before Bishop Robertson passed away. He was a partner in the PACT program, but figuring ways to promote community-based policing, and it's something that requires a special effort. Working on the development of community-based policing and exchanging information about how we're approaching it here, how they're approaching it there. We can probably learn from each other, because historically, policing in the black townships in South Africa was being done by a kind of an occupation force that did not have the best interest of the local community at heart. So that was something that in some cases had been the case here in the United States as well. So police reform and the development of community-based policing, very, very important here and over there as well. As a matter of fact, it's probably important all over the world. The promotion of community-based policing and the exchange of information about this is what we're doing over here. What are you guys doing over there? And it's something that we need here in this country, and if the full truth is known probably all over the world, it's something that's needed, promoting community-based policing. In South Africa, they have a national police force, and that's the case in the Philippines also. They have a national police force there. And here we have local police forces, and we could debate which is better. We're accustomed to having local police forces here, and you can make a good case for that. That police reform at a local level might go better when you have a local police force.
Made up of neighbors and folks that know each other.
That's
What
right.
you're thinking?
Yeah. So now, when you succeed locally, that might or might not translate into success nationally. So there's a possibility that young people growing up in Kitsap County, where we have a pretty good effort going on at developing community-based policing, that when they cross the border over to Seattle, they might be in for a little bit of culture shock. So they might be faced with some things that they're not ready for. So that's something that you can see that it's important that we want to have a local effort to promote community-based policing. And on the other hand, we want to translate that into a national effort at the same time. And maybe by exchange of information is how you can do that. But that's an important part of the overall effort, promoting community-based policing. And that's how we can win back control of our federal government by having good community-based policing in our local communities here.
And so he also did receive the Nobel Peace Prize in 1994 for his work on ending apartheid. He's received over 250 awards over the last 250 over the last 4 decades, including the Presidential Medal of Freedom, and I believe he received an award, the Order of Lenin, from Russia. Is that correct?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know if he received awards from the Russians or not.
But he did receive the Nobel Peace Prize.
Yes.
And the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
Right. He shared that with the last apartheid president of South Africa, F.W. de Klerk. In fact, he had brought F.W. de Klerk into his administration when he formed the new government in South Africa in 1994. So it turned out that partnership did not last very long, and it may be because the difference in experience between the two men made it hard for them to work together. They were coming from two different poles apart, and F.W. de Klerk, he was basically sympathetic to the cause of democracy in South Africa. But in order to work together, people have to have a little bit more experience in common. They're coming from vastly different places. Now, in 2024, they had the national election in South Africa. It turned out that the African National Congress won a plurality of the vote, but they did not win a majority. And in second place, they had the Democratic Alliance, which is predominantly white, political party came in second, and neither one of them had enough parliamentary seats to actually form a government on their own. So they got together and they decided, well, the Constitution says we got to form a government together. Let's go ahead and do it. So they did it. They each of these parties kind of felt that it was better to keep the country going than to try to bring down the country by bringing down the other party. You know, and that's something we can learn from those folks also. That we could use some of that bipartisanship here, because when it becomes more important to tear down the other political party than to keep the country going, that's when the whole country gets pulled apart.
Yeah, and to be honest, I'm seeing that on both sides.
This is true. This is true. That um, it's a good call to say that yeah, Trump has been corrupt. He's been dictatorial, which is the case, and he should be removed from office. Absolutely, he should be removed from office. But to say that that will be the country will be necessarily saved by a Democratic majority, that the Democrats got to do some soul searching also, because both of the parties have to get together and say, you know what, this is our country, and we don't want to tear it apart.
Is it time for a multi-party system? Because both parties fight tooth and nail to ensure that a third party cannot exist.
This is true.
I mean, they both agree on that. Like, we're not going to allow a third party to get footing.
Yeah, and that's something we probably could use, a healthy third party, because we don't really want to have domination by one party or another. We want to have the different political parties coming together to serve the people,
Mm-hmm.
and to serve the people in a way that people's lives will actually improve.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, and I'm not afraid to say it. You know, I like things from both sides, right? I like to take care of people, but I also like fiscal responsibility, and I think that we can do both. And I think that we're powerful enough. We're also rich enough that we can do that. There's no reason for us not to, and there's ways that we can do that. We just need to put our money where our mouth is and show where our values are. And it's just not hard. You know, I think we need to look within. We have some infrastructure issues. We have some healthcare issues, and we really need to look at taking care of our people, which we have not done for a long time. But our country has fallen down around us, and then the people in it. We really have to love on our own people.
That's right. And you know, when you look at healthcare, that illustrates a kind of a weakness in our system. We've fallen into the temptation of having the governmental entity, which creates the new money, also becomes the entity that spends most of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a very healthy thing. And the Affordable Care Act, which Obama introduced when he was the president, that was something that was inherently complicated, but it was done with very good intentions. Let's make sure that everybody has the health care that they need. And this is people from all different circumstances that would be coming to get the health care that they need. You know, young people, old people, people with all kinds of different health conditions. And it was something that was complicated in and of itself, but it became immensely more complicated when the Congress got a hold of it and they started turning into a congressional pork festival.
Mm. A pork festival?
Yeah. Everybody was looking to see what they could do.
I've heard it framed that way.
Yeah,
A pork festival. That's accurate.
you
Oh,
know,
that's funny.
but they got a lot of pork barrel spending in
Yeah,
there.
they did.
And I think by the time they got done with it, they had something like 18,000 pages of legislation, and uh, nobody was really up to speed. No individual was up to speed on what everything was that was in it. And somebody had made the uh, comment that we might as well pass this, put it into effect, so that we'll see what's in it,
Mm,
because nobody had time to read it before they voted on it.
hmm.
So that was how one of the congressional representatives said we might as well pass it, and then we'll see what's in it when we try to make it work. So uh, the business of the congressional pork barrel spending, that has a corrupting effect on the country also. Uh, in fact, it literally causes a situation where every congressional district in the country is stealing from every other congressional district in the country because they're trying to get their own pork uh, uh, going through. So it's been going on for so long, we don't even think of it as stealing anymore because it's been a kind of a permanent fixture in our politics. But it would be better if we resisted the temptation to have the entity which is creating the money to be the entity that's also spending most of it. It's probably better that most of the spending should be done uh, by governmental entities that have to balance their budgets.
Well, as we wrap, Carl, and let me say, again, I appreciate, you being keeping the light on in the lighthouse in regards to this history. Um, Many of us don't like history. Most of us don't know our history. Aren't going to know our history. Aren't going to be interested in our history. If we start talking about our history, we're going to turn and walk away. This will probably be one of the lowest viewed podcasts that I have this week, this month, maybe this year, and it's sad and it's unfortunate. But the answers are probably more in this podcast than any other podcast because this is how you organize and this is how you actually affect change. This is how you get things done behind bars for 27 years. This is how you fight from behind. This is how you galvanize a people, a country, a movement, and make steadfast change that is lasting. And so this is where the answers are, right? And this is we're going to miss it, unfortunately, and that's for other boomers, Gen X, millennials, alphas, and on down, right? And it's getting lost. And then we also have folks that are trying to destroy our history in all forms, in all manner, and it's tragic, and then it's scary because we're not catching on to it, and we're fine with it, most of us. Uh, and for those of us that may not be fine with it, we're in a survival mode, and it's something that we can't fight for because we're trying to keep food on the table, we're trying to keep a roof over our head, or we're trying to stay alive, our health is bad, or we're fighting all these things. It's a multi-pronged attack. But with all those things said, today is July 18th. It is Mandela's birthday. It's Nelson Mandela International Day, and it's about encouraging people to do 60 minutes, 67 minutes of community service. Uh, and so you've done more than 67 minutes because we've been on for 68 right now, which is, well, 68, 78. So are you going to do anything else today? You've already put your time in. Do you have a challenge for the audience to put in 67 minutes today?
Well, the big thing that I would say is please support the work of the NAACP. No one person is going to be able to do it all by himself.
Facts.
But just join the team because it was the NAACP largely saved the country from the old Jim Crow uh, uh, racial segregation, and the NAACP is promoting the cause of community-based policing, and that's another thing that we can all do. Support that cause of community-based policing. And there again, no one person is going to do the whole thing all by himself. And for the rest of my day, um, I've got to get ready for an important meeting over at the Filipino American Association tomorrow. So that's another thing that I got to get ready for, because we're also promoting another event. And I'll put in a plug for this event, even though I don't know the exact date for it yet. That's the annual event uh, which celebrates Filipino American History Month and Indigenous Peoples Day and the birthday of the U.S. Navy.
All right.
The birthday of the U.S. Navy came right around the same time. It was on October the 12th, October 13th of 1775, that the U.S. Navy had its first birthday. Well, it's zero birthday. That was the day it was born, October 13th, 1775. So that's something to celebrate along with the Filipino American History Month and Indigenous Peoples Day. And I think the folks in the Navy, they might need a little bit of moral support this year also.
All right. Well, you heard it there from Carl. 67 minutes. If you got it in you, if you can't do it today, you could always do it tomorrow. Also, understand if you don't join the NAACP, that's great, or whatever organization. Right now, it's a call to the NAACP. To be full transparency, I'm not a member of the NAACP. However, in ways that I can support is one, I can give a platform. In ways you might be able to support, it might be cooking or it might be giving someone a ride. All of those things are ways to help. So if you're always, because I have these conversations with people all the time, it's like, oh, I don't know how to help, I don't know what to do, or I don't have time, or whatever the case may be. There are little things that you can do where you can help to be a cog in the machine, where it's not your rope, because there's a fear of, well, if I do a commitment, then I'm roped in and I'm just in this thing, and I can't get off the merry-go-round, and now I'm doing 40 hours a week of volunteering for this, and I don't know how to say no, and I can't do it on this day and whatnot. You can do little things, and the little things actually really do help, because those folks have to eat, they get thirsty, they get tired. Some folks don't have a car. You can make signs. There's little things that you could do to support those that are actually doing the work, and that is still doing the work. So all of those things need to be done, and you are still being a part of it. So think outside the box, be a critical thinker, and always, I'm going to sign off. But for Carl from the NAACP, I am R1 Cameron, helping happy Nelson Mandela International Day. As always, take care of yourself, more so today, and take care of each other. Until next time, this is The Conduit.